good faith misunderstanding of the law that they can't even prove as a misunderstanding, it's one of the definitions of innocence. So you might even prevent an indictment in a state with the work I've done on federal tax law. So it exposes now state income tax on compensation for services, FICA on paychecks, the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, Social Security Tax Code Chapter 21. Chapter 2, Social Security, self-employed. How did Section 83 operate in your conclusion, I owe any of that? A tax on my paycheck, Chapter 1. They can't even talk to you about it, and yet Section 83 applies to all compensation. That means it applies to 3121A wages in FICA, it applies to self-employment earnings in Chapter 2, Social Security, and it applies to Chapter 1, compensation for services. And they can't talk about it. And if you don't owe Chapter 21, your employer does not owe matching FICA. So with just Section 83A, I can destroy the entire tax scheme as it relates to compensation for services with just one paragraph of law. So all that they get from you in your paycheck is theft. They steal Social Security by ignoring the definition of citizen in the Social Security Act of 1935, Chapters 2 and 21 of the Tax Code, Title 42, Section 411B2, where they say who gets Social Security benefits. Same definition of citizen. It's not me. It's not the citizen of the United States. They can't talk about it. We just had an exchange of briefs in 2017 on the Seventh Circuit. The government's top attorney, Richard E. Zuckerman, Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General of the United States in charge of the tax division, civil and criminal. That's the guy I'm writing against. They can't even talk about these statutes, yet they've had the arguments under them since 1993. Now, does that sound like somebody they want on the witness stand testifying on their own behalf at a criminal trial? I don't think so. So all of that's theft. Now, what about capital gains? You say I'm subject to Chapter 1. In these other chapters, they identify a citizen who's subject to the tax, and in Chapter 1, they don't identify a citizen that is subject at all to the Section 1 graduated income tax, where all the brackets are. Then you have Section 1H, capital gains. Nowhere in Section 1, and it goes on for page after page after page. If you made this much, you can do this much. If you made that much, you pay more. All the brackets. And Section 1H imposes capital gains tax. Nowhere in Section 1 is there a definition of citizen. Nowhere in Chapter 1 of the tax code is there a definition of citizen. And so they wrote a regulation under Section 1 saying citizens of the United States owe this tax. You can't do that as a regulation. A regulation imposing a tax, an executive official imposing a tax. The 16th Amendment says Congress can collect the income tax. It has to be a statute. The Seventh Circuit in 2012, Vallone versus Commissioner, Vallone versus United States, the Seventh Circuit said, and so he says he's a sovereign citizen and not subject. However, all citizens of the United States are subject to the tax. See Regulation 26 CFR 1.1-1 that identifies the subject of the income tax. Stop everything, point of order. The Seventh Circuit just said that a regulation identifies the subject of the tax. In 2017, in that Seventh Circuit exchange, I went so far, so boldly to say only the regulation imposes a tax. They penalized the litigant $4,000 and can't talk about it when they've had the argument since 1993. Okay, so there's another one that's correct. It's an argument against capital gains. Don't apply Section 1 to me. It only applies to me because you wrote a regulation. I protest. I've placed all of that revenue into the category of racketeering and extortion. You never owed it. It's not a tax. It's a penalty for being a citizen of the United States. Secondly, state income tax on compensation. I just destroyed all that. If the motor vehicle code doesn't apply to a traveler, the traveler is robbed in the form of it's not a gas tax. It's a motor vehicle fuel excise tax. Every motor vehicle is an automobile, but not every automobile is a motor vehicle. An automobile is used for travel. So the traveler is screwed out of motor vehicle fuel excise tax, motor vehicle tire excise tax, annual tabs, register your car, buy a license, pay for an emissions test, traffic court, jail, traffic fines, anything born of the motor vehicle code. Listen to all that theft I just listed that in fact is revealed as theft if you can prove your motor vehicle code's never been broadened beyond its original scope. Challenge them on this with just the law and they'll screw you. You are not a citizen. You are a possession of racketeers and kidnappers. Period.